Today's podcast is sponsored by the Property Boss and House Spotters. Sell your home with absolute confidence.
And then a friend come along and he said, Pat, they've all gone into your house. Obviously, I've run up the road and everyone's followed me, and the door's closed and I've knocked on the door and the copper said to me, what do you want? And I said, I live here. He said, we got another one. It started again, he said about the traces and it proves you've been handling explosives. When we get to Guildford, if you haven't told me, by the time we get down there, what I want to know, you answer my questions, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Well, in fact, he said, we'll beat the shit out of you. The copper kept saying to me, they don't make mistakes. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. You're a bomb maker.
They knew from the word go.
They knew from the word go.
And this again to quote Paddy, it was a public outcry that got all these fitted up because somebody had to pay for this.
I want to be able to tell this story about this cell and that place, and talk about it and be comfortable with it,
So, hi, welcome back to Social Sessions. It's been long awaited season 2, and I couldn't think of a better guest that we've got. 2 guests actually, but we're here to talk about one of probably the world's worst miscarriage of justices, the Guildford case, and obviously Patrick was involved in that. He was 14. So I'll just take it to yourself, Patrick. What was it like growing up, like as a kid and stuff, and where did you grow up?
I grew up in London. Well, I was born in Ireland, in Belfast, and Mum and Dad had been living in London when they got married. They moved over, settled there, and 2 brothers were born in London. My mum was carrying me, and then she went over to Ireland. And luckily, by luck, I was born there, and I'm happy for that. I grew up in central London, West London, and I was having a great time.
Good. So, was it like just a normal upbringing? Yeah.
We never grew up in the Irish sort of environment,
Aye.
My dad was adamant about what school we were going to go to. He didn't want us to go to Catholic schools and be going through that sort of system,
Aye.
We're in London, so we're going to go to a everyday school down the road with a mixture of kids, My mates were like their parents were like Greek, Turkish, and Jamaican, West Indian. It was that sort of
multicultural kind of.
Yeah. Not that I would have known that or made any sense of it. You're a kid, But from what I know and experience through my own kids, I'm glad my dad did do that.
Aye.
And
obviously, Scott, this is your second time on Social Sessions. Great to have you, CEO of Mojo. Obviously, we've had you, but just obviously for yourself, just for anyone that's watching, what was your upbringing and stuff, and how did you get involved in the kind of justice side of stuff?
Like I say, normal everyday upbringing, no too dissimilar for Patrick's, I imagine. No, the nicest area in the world I grew up in, but I was fortunate to have an ordinary living family, and done all right in school. Come up with the idea in my 6th year at school that I wanted to go and be a criminal lawyer, and went to law school with that in mind, and got involved with 2 different charities right for the word go in my first year of my LLB at Strathclyde, and that led me to the Miscarriages of Justice organisation, and I've never left. The day and hour that I graduated, I was offered the aftercare project manager role, which I grabbed with 2 hands, and I've been acting CEO for a number of months now, but my predecessor, Cathy Malloy, who gave everything to the role before me for the last 2 decades, has had to retire through ill health. So I've been lucky enough to get the big seat and the chief exec role, and I'm anxious to put my own mark on the role. Sean and Patrick knows all too well that for the difficult start to the year at Mojo, we lost our founder, Paddy Hill, at the Birmingham Six, who had been frail for some time, but in the end passed quite suddenly on the 30th of December this year. Patrick's up the road to see us for a celebration of Paddy's life. It's going to take place tomorrow at the Clutha. So anxious to carry on Paddy's legacy, and determined to do my best to do that.
It's obviously like we're all here, and obviously it's great that Patrick's up, and it's just obviously it's a sad state that why you're up, Patrick, but it's highlighting probably like 2 of the biggest miscarriage, like the two of the worst kind of institutional, kind of corrupt miscarriage of justices that you could probably ever think of. I mean, you talk about cases and different things, but when you talk about the Birmingham Six and the Guildford case, it's that there's so much. There's just so much to it, and obviously we'll go into that later. But what was it like? Obviously, as being just so young, like, because what was it, 13 year old? I mean, what was that like? So how talk me through how that came about, just that day.
Well, like the day leading up to that, not knowing that was going to happen, was like every day. It was. I weren't too happy at school in the sense of I didn't want to be there. You know what I mean? But it was early stages at school, so I probably would have got on better. But I was, like I say, 13 years of age, and I just wanted to get home every day. I was quite happy to get home. And as I said, I had a great childhood. Everything was good. Working class, you know. Dad liked to drink, and out to the point of being an alcoholic. Great dad, right? And my mum never touched a drop, and she had 5 cleaning jobs a day. I did 2 of them, one in the morning before school. No moaning and groaning, it's what you did. No problems at all. And I did one in the evening with her, you know, and life was just good. But I remember that day, I came home quite early because I'd had a row. The school bully had been doing these rounds, you know, over the last few months or whatever, and it was my turn, right? And I'm not looking forward to it, but I knew it was coming. And I remember it was in science class, and it was on the ground floor, and it was a lovely, you know, the sun was shining. I don't know if the sun was shining, but it was a nice enough day. And he come over and started on me, and you know, I'll see you out at dinner and all this stuff. Well, I opened up the window and I've jumped out onto the ground, the grass outside. He came to the window, and I just pulled him out, you know, put an end to his bullying. But I got sent home early for it, right? Which was all right. And I was given a note to bring home to my mum. Well, that went in the bin. And when I got home, I remember first thing I saw when the door opened, Mum opened the door, was a little suitcase, really old one, you know. And I noticed that, and then I noticed in the front room with my dad sitting there was who I knew was Giuseppe Conlon, Jerry Conlon's father, right? And it was always, he was an old, even though he was a young man even then, but he always looked old and ill because he had tuberculosis or TB, you know. Anyway, but I don't know what's going on, right? And then my other brother John, God rest him, who ain't with us no more, a couple of years older than me, he said, I may have said to him, what's going on here? Why is it Giuseppe here, like, you know? He said, well, Jerry's in trouble, Jerry Conlon. He's been nicked for bombing. That's going over my head. None of this makes any sense to me, right? It didn't matter to me, you know. This was a Thursday night, I believe, and on a Thursday night, we went to the youth club. So all I had in my mind was a quick bite to eat and get down to the youth club, like, you know, and do what kids do. And that's what I did. And after the youth club, we'd come out, and unlike a lot of the other kids in the area, we weren't allowed to hang around for too long on the streets. I mean, my mum would be out shouting my name very loudly, like, you know, and my mates would be taking the piss out of me and that stuff. But anyway, on this particular night, time went on, and I'm still standing there with the gang, all the lads and the girls, and my name ain't being called, you know. So I'm leaving it like that. But we noticed across the road from us was a load of cars with their engines stood on, unmarked police cars. They were to be, but I didn't know then. Someone said it might be them, and then all of a sudden they all took off the cars, heading towards my house, my direction, where we live. And I still weren't thinking nothing. And then a friend came along and he said, Pat, they've all gone into your house. So obviously I've run up the road and everyone's followed me, you know, and the door's closed, and not having a key. I've knocked on the door, and the door opened, and the hallway was full of, you know, with some uniformed police, and plainclothes ones. And the copper said to me, what do you want? And I said, I live here. He said, here, we got another one. Dragged me in, door closed, and there you go.
And that was at 13 years of age?
Yeah, it was, so I ended up in the kitchen, and my brother John's there, and he'd warmed up the place, like, you know, giving them a bit of verbal, you know, they're wrecking the house, they're turning it upside down. And my mum was very house proud and all that sort of stuff. You know, it was a house she lived in, it was lived in, but what they were doing, we would never have done. They're pulling things out of the cupboards and opening up tins and pouring out cereal. And John's, my brother John said to them, what are you looking for? And they said, we're looking for bombs, right? And we just laughed. We thought, what the fuck? This is...
How many police are we talking?
In the house?
Aye.
Anything from 20 plus maybe, dogs.
Like a special branch? Or
Yeah, all that
lot.
lot, guns and, they were, they like the...
Was it armed? With the armed?
Armed, yeah.
Aye.
There's no rifles or anything, but they're all tooled up,
Aye.
And it was the bomb squad and the
Aye,
special
aye,
branch
of
or whatever, like, And I all the time, obviously the adults, my mother who was there, she would have known the seriousness of what was going on, even though she would know you're not going to find nothing here. But I didn't. I just got caught up in the excitement of it all, and plus knowing.
No, I know you don't even look at it that way, in the way that you're only, and maybe you can touch on that, Scott, in the way that, like, I'd been only 13, and you're looking at things, and we sometimes talk about, like, Luke Mitchell being 14 and stuff, and the way that he get treated, and you're still a kid, and he's, as Patrick's saying, you're getting caught up in the excitement and stuff. Is that, what does that kind of do? You'll see it with different kind of cases. What does that do to the kind of psyche, like, somebody at that age?
Well, I think Patrick's probably better placed than me to describe the damage it's done to somebody that's wrongfully arrested and wrongfully convicted at 14. I spoke about this the last time I was on, how the 3 big troubles-related UK miscarriages of justice cases. But like I say, I find Patrick's family and Patrick himself is the most egregious of the Guildford 4, Birmingham 6 and the Maguire 7, because he was just a child.
I know.
There was a policeman somewhere that took the conscious decision to fit up a 14-year-old boy for being a bomb maker alongside his mother, his brother, his uncle, and all the rest of his family. But like I say,
and it's the lack. It's. I mean, obviously we're going to go into it, right? But it's the kind of lack of accountability of the system to take any kind of accountability on what that does to a child.
Yeah.
Like they don't ever even, like, do you know what I mean? It's not like there's no accountability. There's no like, it's just the way they you would think you just wouldn't act like that with a child. Do you know what I mean? And obviously it's just horrible to kind of to hear. So take us through what happened after that. Then, Patrick, what happened? So obviously, like, you're kind of caught up, and then the police are in. When did it start kind of coming to you that this is serious here?
Oh, it wouldn't be for was it the men that were in the house, like Giuseppe, my dad, a friend of the family, and my Uncle Sean, who was living with us. They'd gone out for a beer earlier, right? Because when men get together, regardless of the occasion, you're going to go and have a beer, right? And that's what they did, the local pub. And what was it? My brother John was asked. The police actually said that they'd been watching our house and our movements for a while, but yet they had to get my brother John to go to the local pub with them to point out the men, right? And John reluctantly went, and he never pointed. But when the pub door was open and John's walked in with them, my dad's turned around, and obviously he's gone, "Oh, son, what are you doing?" And that was that, right? But so they were all taken away, the men, they're all gone. And then getting back to when me and John were in the kitchen, and then, and we were in and ahhing, all the rest of it. And then the coppers, the leading coppers, walked in with my mum into the kitchen because he's told her, my mother, "We're going to take your sons away now and all." And by that time, my other brother, Vince, had come home from college. Mm-hmm. And my mum's obviously burst into tears going, "Leave the kids." But they've gone, "No." So, they put myself and my 2 brothers in the back of a van, and they took us off to Paddington Green Police Station, the anti-terrorist place. And even then, I didn't know that how serious all this was about. You know what I mean? I'm with my 2 brothers, so
no, I know.
I feel safe somewhat, like, you know what I mean? And the excitement of it all. When I say the excitement, I weren't going, "Oh."
No, I know what you mean. I know.
I was thinking, when this is over, I'll be telling my mates about this story tomorrow. I'll have something to say, right? Mm-hmm. So they took it to the police station. They'd done forensic tests and all the rest of it, scraping the nails and swabs. A few questions. Compared to what I was going to experience later on, Paddington Green was all right. Mm. The copper, he leaned back and he showed his gun off a bit.
Aye.
You know what I mean? But the questioning was quite nice.
Aye.
You know what I mean, when I say nice, it weren't
No, I know what you mean. Aye.
weren't verbally abusive. He wanted to know, was I an Irish family? But they didn't mention anything about bombs or anything like that. They did, like, maybe they might have said, like, did any strange people come to your house? And I think I turned around and said, when my dad's drunk,
Aye.
when he comes home, that's strange. You know what I mean?
Aye.
That's the strangest thing. And it was all right in that sense. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, they took myself and my 2 brothers back home. But when I say home, it weren't no more,
Aye.
because it was turned upside down. My mum and dad weren't there. And it was around leading up to Christmas. Was it late December or early December? Early December, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. About the 3rd or 4th of December, somewhere in there. All I'd been waiting for was Christmas itself. And I mean, and this house, which was once, only a few hours ago, was very colourful and alive, was now in somewhat darkness,
Aye.
cold, and not the home I had left, you know?
It's just obviously I can't imagine like walking back into like that, and it's no home anymore.
No, it's not.
Just,
no.
and it's changed in a heartbeat.
So, because every time I came home from anywhere, my mother,
Mhm.
definitely my mum, would always be there.
Mhm.
And my dad, but you're guaranteed. I never walked into that house once as a kid without my mother at least being there.
So who was back when you went back home? Who was in the
Coppers.
house? Just
Yeah,
the
a
Cottles?
couple of uniform women and some fellas taking photographs and doing whatever they were doing.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't take much notice of it. We all wanted to make a cup of tea, or my elder brother said, make a cup of tea or whatever it was, and they said, no, bed. So we all got us off the bed, like, you know. And I can't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. Because I used to wake up every morning to my mum calling me, get up for school. I didn't want to get up. You know, so I remember waking up and lying there waiting for that to happen, and never.
So sad, didn't it?
Yeah. And that was the beginning of it. But there was more to come. If I thought that was bad, there was a lot more to come, just round the corner.
So what happened next then, Patrick? What was the next stage in you kind of? Obviously, so is the police watching you? Are they kind of like in custody of you at this time?
No,
But
mum and
you're-
dad are in custody,
Right.
right? And we weren't even charged then. We were late to be charged, like
Aye,
me
aye.
and my elder brother. They come later on, but I can't remember the times absolutely. But it would be before Christmas, I think, that's for sure. Guildford Police had phoned up Paddington Green. No, I was living with an auntie, over in South London, and all of a sudden the local police from the area come round knocking on my auntie's door, who I'm staying with now, because at the house I can't stay at the
No,
house,
of course.
right? And I remember being woken up by this big lump of a copper. Well, there was a couple of them. There's 2 more downstairs. And my little sister, who was 7 at the time, she was laying next to me, crying her eyes out. This big lump's waking me up. You got to come with us. Where am I going? You know what I mean? He said to me, I don't know. We've been told to come and get you, right? So I've got dressed. We've gone downstairs. My aunt's crying. She's crying her eyes off. And she said, can he have a breakfast before he goes? And they said, well, he'll get one when he gets there. So that was the first lie, right?
Aye.
You know. So they handcuffed me and they frog marched me down the road, outside the house, down the road. The car was parked around the corner, and I may have asked them, like, what's going on?
Mhm.
And they said, we don't know. So that was the answer. I was like, they're not saying nothing. So I'm squashed in the back with these 2 lumps and 2 in the front, and down the Carter police station, which is no longer there in London. And that would be my first real experience of being locked up in a cell. And now I'm starting to think, not so much think, feel.
I know, because you can only
I don't know what the thing.
No, I know, you can
So
only
the-
really feel
Yeah, but
from
the
a
feeling
child's
was,
point.
what was it, like butterflies on acid or something? I mean, it was that
Aye,
feeling
aye.
of just, this ain't right at all.
Mhm.
Excuse me. A few hours later, the door was opened, and this copper I describe, when I say a giant, I mean, and my dad confirmed it many years later. He said, yeah, because I always thought, was he that big because I was that small, right? But the man was an absolute giant, and he filled that door up when it opened, and he stood there, and he looked at me, and he said, right, do you remember the tests that were done on you at Paddington Green? And I said, oh, you can't forget that. Because now I don't have any nails. I was always biting them. They bled. When they were scraping them, they bit of blood and all that. I said, yeah. He said, well, it proves that you've been fucking about with bombs, right? And like straight away, I've said, no, not with a smile. I said, no, not at all. You've made a mistake. He said, I haven't made a mistake. These scientists have been doing this for 30, 40 years. You've been making bombs at your house with your mother and all the rest of it. And I just, with confidence, not as a cocky kid,
Aye.
with confidence, I've said, no, we're not like that. That's not us. You've made a mistake. And I couldn't tell him who had done it or who was doing it. I couldn't have told them anything at all. And I said, no, you've got it wrong. We're not that kind of people. But he weren't having that. So the handcuffs went on and he took me outside and stuck me into a little Ford Escort. I remember it clearly, white Ford Escort, 2-door, 3-door with a little boot.
Aye.
And there was a bird in the front, a woman, copper, plain clothes. Horrible. Straight away. I mean, she greeted me with a right old horrible looking growl. And this lump, he put me into the back of the car, handcuffed. I'll tell you how big he was. When he got in the back with me, he had to push the seat forward and flat
Aye.
onto the dashboard.
Aye.
And I swear to God, he was like that. His feet were on the deck. That's how big and lumpy he was. And I'm squashed in the back there and I'm handcuffed and yeah.
Is this the start of the intimidation? Aye.
Yeah. And then as we're taking off, before we even left the police yard, it started again and he said about the traces and it proves you've been handling explosives. When we get to Guildford, if you haven't told me, by the time we get down there, what I want to know, you answer my questions, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Well, in fact, he said, we'll beat the shit out of you. That's what's happening to your mum and dad right now. Right? And he says, when we get down there, if you haven't answered my questions, tell me what I need to know, you're in a lot of trouble. There's 6 lads waiting down there for you with odd now boots on. They're going to beat the shit out of you. Right? To say I'm shitting myself is...
No,
Right?
I know.
But all the time, what I'm thinking to myself, I ain't done that. We ain't done nothing wrong. Right?
No, I know.
Right.
I know. It's
And that somewhat comforted me because I'm hoping he ain't going to do what he's telling me he's going to do.
I know.
Right? And that can I don't know how long it takes to get from London to Guildford, but the whole journey was him repeating and the verbal abuse it picked up. And all I did in there was just look out of this window. It was pitch black by now and it was raining. And I don't remember you as a kid when you was on a coach going out for the day with the school and it started to rain. You know when the rain walk comes down the window?
Aye.
You and your mate would pick one. And I tried to do that, but I couldn't. I couldn't even,
I don't even know how your brain's probably not functioning right and everything.
I'd never been. What he was threatening to do with me, right? And that even just the verbal abuse, I'd never experienced it in my life. My father was strict, but Jesus, he never laid a hand on me,
Aye.
and he never verbally abused me in any way at all. I got told off, as you
Aye.
do, right? This was beyond whatever. I'd never witnessed any of this sort of stuff, TV or otherwise. Never been around people that were this angry,
Aye.
right? And I must have gone into some sort of shock, I'm sure, right?
Oh, aye, definitely.
And
Aye.
then as we're getting nearer and nearer, and the only reason I knew we were near Guildford or near the police station is that he had this rain mac that he pulled out of somewhere, and he wrapped it around my head and got me in a headlock. And I panicked. I really did struggle. I tried to get out of it and all the rest of it. And he said something on the lines of, there's a lot of reporters down here outside. We don't want them taking your photo. We don't want them sitting, right? And as we got out of the car, he had me in a headlock with the coat around me, handcuffed, and dragged me into the police station. And I remember this clearly at all when we got in there and you got the desk sergeant, right, that area, right? And again, this is all new to me. I don't know about all this stuff. And there was loads of other coppers, plain clothes, uniforms, sorry, all hanging around as they do. And as we're going in, I'm looking at the floor and at my feet. And all of a sudden, he just pulls the coat off and I'm handcuffed. And I remember the desk sergeant scratching it, looking down and going to him, what's this? Who's this? And he said, this is another one of them. He said, another who? He said, one of the bombers. And the sergeant turned around and said, get their handcuffs off now. And I felt a bit of, I thought, wow,
humanity.
Someone's good here, right? There's something, And so he reluctantly took them off and they booked me in. And
Did you look? Sorry, did you look young, Patrick? Like, were you
Me?
like? Did you look like?
well,
a
I'm
kid?
64 now.
Aye.
I mean, I don't look too bad. I
No,
get
no,
told,
you,
right?
no, you look
So,
40.
right. So when I was a kid,
Aye.
excuse me, mentally as well, I'm gone ahead,
Aye.
right? I might. If they'd done a little test on me, I'd probably be about 10 or 11. You know what I mean? Like I said, all I did in school was chase girls, play football, and I was good at art.
Aye.
You know what I mean? And I loved being a kid. I loved getting home and playing, being a
Aye,
child. So, yeah, I think he whatever he saw, but he saw a kid.
Aye.
You know, he might have had one like that at home,
Aye.
same sort of age. Who knows, right? And then it was suggested that they brought me around to, after being booked in, they brought me around the corner and there was a cell there with a door open and not very nice. None of it. The atmosphere in this place is just rotten. And
the spirits just sucked out you into it, the whole place.
Yeah, and they were going to put me in there. And I said to the sergeant, because he walked me around, I said, I've got asthma, which I did have, right? I said, is there any chance? Because I'd experienced the first prison cell, the police cell in Carter Street, right? And I didn't like that. So the doors opened and I said to him, and he was being nice. I sensed that, right? And I said, is there any chance I could sit outside? Because there was little chairs outside each cell. And he said, all right. Jokingly, he said, don't be going nowhere, right? And I said, fine. And I sat there and time went by and this other copper come around, uniform, and he said to me, right, your brother is coming in a minute. So they've gone and got him and all. I don't know which brother, right? They said, and I said, which one? And he said, I don't know. He said, but when your brother comes through, don't acknowledge him, don't say anything to him, just sit there. As soon as my brother come around, I'm off that seat. I'm wrapping myself around him. Big brother Vince, 3 or 4 years older than me, and matured. Yeah, he's a matured lad, like, you know. He's rubbed my old head there with that big brother smile. He said, you'll be all right, mate. And then before you know, I'm banged up. I'm in the cell now. They've locked the door because I've disobeyed that order, you know what I mean? And
is this the first time you've seen a family member for a significant
amount
of
hours?
But
if it had only been a half hour,
of course,
it was just because I had no concept of time.
No,
I couldn't even tell the time, right? Really and truly, I couldn't tell the time. I had no concept of anything, and I'm in there now, and I don't know. Obviously, I must have been in the right state. And then time went by. It just seemed forever and ever. It went on, and then this door was open, and it nearly come up the hinges. And there he is, the big giant again, standing there. Fucking, did he look angry? Red. This is winter time.
Right.
He was down to his shirt. He had them rolled up. I now know.
I know.
He's on it. He wants it, right? I wouldn't have known that, but I just sensed that. I knew he weren't nice anyway, and his face was red, and he was just so freaking angry. And he said, "Right, get up." And I had no shoes on anyway. They had them outside, and I can't remember if he handcuffed me again or just grabbed me by the wrist. And to keep up with him, I was on my toes like that, you know, because he big strides. And we walked past loads of other little cells, like the one I was in. And before he had said it, I'd noticed the tobacco pouch that we've got my father that year for Father's Day, sitting outside in a pair of shoes. And the other people, like Giuseppe Con, but I didn't know they were all in there.
Aye.
But I spotted my dad's tobacco pouch. And I think I said to him, that's my dad's, like that. And he just grinned and laughed and dragged me up. And we went down the landing, through some doors, up some stairs. We went back again and we ended up in this great big room. And all the tables like you would had in school, you know, the ones you can stack on top of each other, like that. All around the walls, they're all stacked up, all piled up neatly, and chairs and everything, all neatly stacked. Right in the middle of this quite a big room with loads of lights on, there was one table with 3 chairs. And the copper who drove us down there, she's sitting there, right? And there's an empty chair next to her. There's another chair on the other side. That's for me. And he didn't even tell me to sit down. He just brought me over and, you know, he put me there. And he went out, right? And she hadn't spoken all the time from the moment I met her. She hadn't said a word, apart from look. And she's looked up from whatever she's doing. She's going, when he comes back in, he's going to be very angry. And I'm thinking, he is angry. You know what I mean?
I'm more angry. Can he get
right?
it?
Yeah. When he comes back, he's going to be really angry. So when he asks you questions, you give him the answers. And I said to her, I can't, there's nothing I can tell you. You've got the wrong people. You know, we didn't do this.
Did you even know, like, did you even know about the bombings? Like,
Guildford. I didn't
Aye.
even know where Guildford was.
aye,
I wouldn't have known Guildford. I knew my area where I
Aye.
was. I knew Belfast from going there as a kid.
you know there was like maybe even trouble, but did you know there was there had been
No.
bombings? No,
No, well, I know. I hadn't known.
Aye.
I know now
aye,
because of what's happening to me.
right,
Right? But I couldn't have told you where Guildford was
aye, right,
or anything about it. Absolutely nothing I could tell you. And so when he did come back in, and he was asking me the same questions again. Right, where did your mum get them bombs from? And he's walking around her and me like that in a circle. And he'd come round and he'd ask me, he'd say, right, so where's these traces come from? And I'm telling him the same answers. You've made a mistake. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just hit me, punched me right in the back of the head. And I remember grabbing onto the table, and off he went again. And I didn't cry then, right? Not being tough or anything like that. I was stunned
no,
by it.
I know, of course,
He went round again, asked me another question to relate to it. I've gave him the same sort of answers. He's hit me twice as hard, right? I've just gone the tears that came out of me, and I was in bits. Absolutely. And there was actually a puddle of tears. No, this is no word of a lie. There was actually a little puddle of where my tears were on that table. And I actually thought, I don't want to get in trouble here by wetting, and I got whatever I was wearing, I just tried to wipe it because I didn't want to upset them, didn't want to get in trouble anymore. And that went on and on. He just kept circling and circling and asking the same questions over and over. He's getting the same answers. Right? There's nothing I could tell him. I couldn't even lie to him. I couldn't even make it up because I didn't know. I wouldn't know what to say because he did ask me about bombs. Had I seen bombs? If I'd have turned around and said, yeah, there was a bomb this size, blue wire, green wire, and this, he'd know I was lying.
Aye.
So I couldn't even lie. Right? So in the end, I said to him, I said, I'm not going to, and I'm crying, I'm in bits. I said, I'm not going to answer any more questions because every time I do, you hit me. You hit me again for that. And it just went on all night long. And then he'd go out, he went off, and the second time she spoke to me, she actually gave me a tissue. I'll tell you that. She gave me some sort of tissue. It'd be a real hanky,
Aye.
And again, I think I mopped the table up more than I did me.
I actually feel emotional.
Yeah.
Like I can feel a wee tear in my eye just listening to you. Like I just I don't know. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah, but she didn't drop her guard too much. But she, this is how far she went. She looked at me. Excuse me. She said, again, when he comes back in, he's going to be really, really, really angry, right? Tell him something, anything. And I said to her, there's nothing I can tell. You know what I mean? I didn't say to her, I can't make anything up. I just said, there's nothing I can say. There's nothing. And he come in, and that went on again, and plenty of beatings and all the rest of it. And the last thing he said to me, I'm not saying he gave up on me, but at the end of this, as he got hold of me to take me out, he said, your mother's trained you well for this. And I thought, I didn't think it then, but I thought it many years later, he was absolutely right. My mother taught me how to tell the truth, right? You know what I mean? Simple as that. But
and if you're going to, let's be honest, if you're going to break a 13-year-old child, right, a normal child that's like, no, never been in trouble, never.
There's another way of doing it, I think. You know what I mean?
But punching you for hours and hours and hours, like you surely think in your own head, right, they're fucking broke me now. Like, you're not talking about Scotty.
Well, he must have got the, I've often thought this and all. When it's only my imagination, but you imagine when they were all the coppers that were doing the interrogating, right? They're all in a big room, and he's got me, right? He must have thought, right, I'll have him done in 10 minutes, and I'll be going home earlier tonight. He's going to tell us everything. I'm getting on to what you're saying.
Exactly,
you would think somewhere along the lines they would just go.
So how long are we talking here? Like,
the whole night. It went on and on and on forever. And I've missed out.
Obviously, under the Terrorism Act, like they can hold you for longer. Am I right in saying that? Like, there's no and they can hold you in the station for
2 weeks or whatever. No, we would have get out the next day, but I weren't to know that.
Right.
But I did miss out one or two things, which I think is important. On the way down, and I wrote about this, on the way down to Guildford and all that stuff, and he's questioning me and throwing all that at me. At one point, we were going past a woody area, a forest or whatever you like. And I felt something cold on the side of my head, right? And I know what it was. It was a gun, right? Absolutely. And he said, he said, you know what I like to do to you? I like to take you in there and blow your fucking brains out. That's what the IRA do. I've said, I don't know what the IRA do. But never experienced a gun, never experienced that sort of verbal and all the rest of it. Obviously, I took that on board. You know what I mean? But I've got to a point where I'm thinking, if this is all you're doing is screaming and shouting at me, I think I might be able to get away. I'll not handle it, but that'll do.
Aye.
I was hoping he weren't going to do it.
Know
He
what you
actually
mean.
threatened to throw me out the window in the interview room. Went over and opened the fucking window and he wanted to throw me out there. You know what I mean? Oh, the threat was unbelievable.
It's like it's Guantanamo Bay shit. Isn't
Yeah.
it? Like it's not. Like, I mean, it's like it's torture. Like
Yeah.
it really is. It's But no, on you go. Sorry for king. It's just it's actually really it's hard to listen to.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's like
I know
Yeah.
Patrick's story.
But I heard my
front to
brother.
back.
Sorry, my brother was next door, and he was going through the same thing. And I heard him. And it weren't the partitions weren't walls. It was like plasterboard or whatever you like. You know, they were banging his head up the wall. I could hear my brother screaming next door. You know what I mean? And so when that all finished, he picked me up and got me and said your mother trained you well and all that sort of stuff. And down to the cells, and I was locked in there, forgotten about it until the next day, not knowing what was going on. And every time I heard someone come along, I thought it's going to start again, you know. And someone would come along and they'd have a look in, didn't give a shit about you, you know. I didn't ask for anything, I didn't want to know. And they want upstairs. There was papers put in front of me, and at one time he tried to get me to sign. I wouldn't sign anything because I just knew this was wrong.
aye,
know what I mean?
aye, you know, like
You know,
you kind of know that there's a setup going on here. Like,
yeah.
because
Well, it wasn't
obviously-
even that. For me, it was more. I didn't know the ins and outs of it, but I just knew. And prior to that, what had I ever signed for anyway as a kid?
I know.
I mean, I'd write my name in birthday cards, Christmas cards. I'd never signed anything.
No.
But, excuse me, something inside of me was just not allowing me to do this.
Mhm.
And I remember the next day when we were being released, and they were taking us back to London, and my brother appears, and they put some papers in front of us. It was like release papers or something.
Aye.
I wouldn't even sign that until my brother was there, and he said, "Pat, we can sign this. As soon as we sign this, we'll be out." He could read it all.
Aye, aye,
He knew it was
aye.
safe enough, you know.
Aye.
And then we got taken back to London, and
So when's the first time you see a lawyer, Patrick?
oh god, that'd be I don't know. It'd be in the new year, I should think.
So they've got. How long did they keep? How long were you before you seen a lawyer?
I don't know. I really can't put a date on it, but
Days, like
no, I think it'd be months. But because
Months?
we weren't charged. See, this is the thing. I don't know if you want me to jump this far
I
ahead.
know, like obviously, no. Just you tell it the way you
Right,
like.
right. So I think we started to see lawyers once me and my brother were charged. Right, we weren't charged.
Right. So
A lot of
right,
people don't know this.
Right.
The Guildford 4.
Right.
For 9 months, it was the Guildford 5.
Right.
My mother was one of. She was
Aye, she was in there.
right.
Aye, aye.
They charged her with murder like with the others.
Mhm.
Right, and they really wanted her. They really crucified her. I swear to God. Right. So after 9 months, the charges were dropped because they couldn't get her. They tried,
Aye.
but they couldn't.
Aye.
Right, as much as they wanted to, they couldn't. So on the day they dropped the murder charge of my mother and charged her with traces of nitroglycerin and you're a bomb maker, right? They told her before they went into court, the police said, "We've dropped the murder charge on you, right? But we got your 2 boys here today, and we're charging them." My mum said, "Charge me with whatever you like. Leave my kids alone," right? So I remember that day in Guildford, because me and my brother had to go down to Guildford with an uncle to appear in court to be formally charged with unlawfully handling nitroglycerin, which I couldn't have said at the age of 13. That nitroglycerin, I can't even spell it. Let alone-
It's stuff you can't even make it up.
Nah,
Like, if
It's the
you
most
know what I mean? Like,
appalling
it's-
abuse of power you could imagine. Like I was saying when you were saying you're quite moved by this, Sean. I know Patrick's story front to back. I support him 3 times a week over the telephone, and I'm sitting here moved by what
Yeah.
you're saying and what
Yeah.
they've done to a child. Some people wouldn't believe that this is the type of thing that goes on in this country, but of course it did.
Oh, you couldn't make this up.
No,
And I've
that's
often
it.
thought if one day someone wants to make a film out of this, say that for argument's sake, Hollywood, right, and all the rest of it, and they've done it as it is, right, people would think, oh, you've used the right poetic license here. Right? You couldn't make this is absolutely how it happened.
It would look overdone.
Yeah.
You know, that way, like
I'm telling you. Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine. Honestly, I just obviously just know, like, I know the way, like, that I've absolutely get nothing like your treatment, like nothing like it. But I know the way they work and the way they operate, and obviously with the IRA stuff and that, I know that there was that was probably why they came down a lot harder on you, and you're working with probably MI5 or there, MI
all of that lot,
and you're working with people who.
Do you know? I even said over the years, right, and not in their defence or anything like that, but trying to just trying to make some sense out of things, all the rest of it. I actually said, I understand how angry they might have been, right? They've just had their town blown up. I understand that, right?
An amazing view to have, by the way, right? But
But you went over the top there. You got a kid.
No, I know.
You got a kid there. If I had known anything at all, you think my house was a bomb? I would have told you in the end.
I know.
You think I'm no tough kid? I would have told them.
And you've got, like, these. You're talking that they've been every top police in Britain that would have been there.
It was a public outcry, and to quiet a public outcry that meant that an innocent, normal London Irish family and the other 10 associated with the case was there. It was because they couldn't get the real people. And it was to quiet a public outcry that meant they were just willing to fit up any of the Irish that they could lift off the street. I'm sure Patrick.
Yeah, but a bomb factory, right? So they think they've come into a bomb factory. Every bomb factory that's ever been found, I mean, you can look this up, you're going to find stuff that's got associated with bomb making ever. They searched the 5-mile radius of the area. They dragged the Grand Union Canal for about 4 or 5 miles, dragged it, looking for stuff. And the 5-mile radius, they searched dustbins, the drains. This is everything looking for anything to do with bomb, and never found a thing. Nothing was ever found in our house to do. Well, we had batteries, like you would have had batteries. There might have been some black tape, insulation tape, like people, but there was nothing out of the ordinary that you would have if you were running a bomb factory. Didn't find any explosives, no traces of it.
So this, obviously, right? So this goes on for months, right? And then obviously, because to be honest, I've watched the film, right? You watched the film, you probably you're getting your view of In the Name of the Father, right? And that, so this is all new to me as well. So it's like, it's stuff that it's even worse than the film, if you know what I'm talking. And the way that, so I don't know this stuff, right? So you've obviously had this like terrible treatment at your root. The charges are dropped on your mum, so they come back now because the charges are dropped on you and get used now.
Yeah, again. But they charged my mum with unlawfully handed in nitroglycerin. Right? Yeah. Right.
So now, what did they charge you with?
The same thing. Same thing. Yeah, I know. And I couldn't have spelled. I couldn't even spell nitroglycerin there if you tried. If you offered me £100, I couldn't. I don't. But I couldn't even say the word. Pronounce it.
And it's just the whole thing of like how hard that stuff is to get, and like if coming for, that's mad. It's mind blowing, to be honest. It is actually mind blowing.
Remember all they've got, Sean, at this stage is that your cousin Jerry Conlon has made one unguarded comment when he's been tortured and asked to confess to blowing up Guildford and Woolwich. They've asked him one question. They've said, "Where might you be staying?" When you're in London? He said, "Oh, I'd maybe be at my Auntie Annie's house." Yeah, this is a normal.
That's why they come down. Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah,
they then went and fitted up a whole family of people just off the back of that one comment.
So that's that one comment then drags this whole
right.
That's fucking.
And I don't know. I couldn't prove this, right? But like I said to her, we weren't into that sort of stuff.
No,
definitely. But I mean, even support. We weren't. My dad had walked away from stuff and came to England to live, and we weren't brought up in that environment, right? I don't know if this is true, but I believe that the Guildford Police Station, as you've just pointed out, have been told that information, right? I reckon they phoned up the Paddington Green and said to them, right, we've got a confession here. Get round to that house. There's a bunch of Irish. I think they were expecting to come round and find us Irish people sitting there with blackberries on, dark glasses, Irish music, and making bombs. The furthest thing they found.
So what is it they've got on Jerry at this time? Then what is it they've got on Like,
Well, a Mickey Mouse confession, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jerry lived in a squat
Yeah.
in London. He was actually quite a vulnerable guy in contrast to the successful campaigner he was when he came out. He was a drug user and
Yeah.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
He was living in basically a rough sleeper,
Yeah.
but he was Irish. So
Right.
when they were lifting Irish people off the street to get a confession, and Louis been able to catch the real terrorists that murdered the people in Guildford and Woolwich, they lifted Jerry Conlon and two other Irishmen that were living with him and one of their girlfriends and tortured them to confess,
Oh, terrible.
as they did with Paddy and the Birmingham Six.
So obviously, right, so obviously the case is all kind of linked, right? So
Absolutely,
you've got like Jerry's case and that you're up there, right, and like with your mum and that, and then are they separating the cases, or are the cases are they merging the cases at this
No,
point?
I don't think so. But what happened was because the Guildford Four was they started in January, didn't they? Their trial. Yeah.
And what was the evidence that what was the evidence that they went to trial with him with? Was it just the fake?
To manufactured confessions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So this the manufactured confession for obviously a vulnerable somebody blah blah is then brought your whole family into. So I know that I don't know how like how you can don't need to answer if you think about it. How did that make you feel like with Jerry then?
I was angry for years, absolutely, and and I was angry, at him. And eventually I was angry at a lot of people, even obviously the copper that beat the shit at me, and other coppers that were going to do the same thing to me over years and years. But as I got older, and I spoke to Jerry and we sorted things out. But for me, I wanted to be angry, right? There was anger there, right? I'm on bail now. I'm out on bail. I'm starting to get a drift and little nickets of it, why this has all happened. Jerry's the man. I know him. Visually, I can put a face to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to attack something, right? And he was my target because that's what I could do, right? But as life went on and time went on, I learned different, and
which is
forgiving.
testament to yourself, like Patrick, is testament to yourself. I mean, it's such a, I don't even know where it is. It's just an absolute minefield of a case. But so what? Obviously, right? We're kind of at the stage where your mum, right? So your mum's been dropped. You've all been charged with that bomb making, right?
But sorry, my mum's name was mentioned quite a lot during the Guildford 4 trial.
Was it?
Oh yeah.
Many Evil Aunt Annie.
Yeah,
Right.
Evil Aunt Annie.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Didn't make apple pies, which she did, right? If I could just say this, back in them days, if my mum's eyes were terrible anyway, right? She wore glasses, and so if any of our clothes needed sewing up, like turned up and all the rest of it, there was a little old woman up the road that used to do it. And for that, my mum would make apple pies, best apple pies in the world, mate, big plate like that. But she would make them.
Aye.
So in the newspapers, eventually they turned around and said, Evil Aunt Annie didn't make apple pies in her kitchen, she made it bombs, and it was Evil Aunt Annie's kitchen and all that sort of stuff.
See the kind of, obviously I don't even need to, I know the answer is going to be, but I'll ask it anyway. Like the red top newspapers, were they kind of behind
the Sun,
sensationalising?
The Sun loved it,
and getting behind all that, and so obviously,
and that was all happening. Sorry, that was being said and done in the paper and probably on the news if it was mentioned. So we were somewhat being trialled before our trial. It we were being mentioned before our case come up. So any future jurors that are going to be in our case are reading all this. They're seeing all this stuff.
And it's a worldwide
of course
case.
it is.
You know what I mean? So so your case came after
Guildford 4.
Right. So the Guildford 4's case. So Guildford 4 found guilty.
Yeah.
What happens next then? Did they come to you and take you to trial then?
Yeah, we started on when did we start? Would it have been? It ended on March the 4th. A few weeks away from my birthday, on March the 22nd. So it went on for what? When I can't remember when we started. It was sometime in February, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And was that a kind of like foundational point of your case, the Guildford? Did they mention that in your case, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I can't remember off because I mean the only thing so when
I know you're asking.
Listen, a kid, right?
I kid to remember.
I remember we're going to the court. For me, it was like, how long this is going to go on for? I'm not going to school. I thought it was brilliant, right? But that didn't last long. After about 3 days of going to the Old Bailey, I'd rather be in school having detention.
I know you.
You know? I didn't know what was going on. Absolutely,
you just
didn't
don't
have
have
a
a
clue.
clue what you're walking into, didn't you? Know,
No,
like,
but I
you
weren't
know.
on my own.
Aye.
You know what? You know,
So who was it? So you and the doc were you as your
Mother,
mother,
father,
your
my oldest
and
brother.
your brother.
a couple of uncles, and a friend of the family who was more or less an uncle. You know what I mean?
Aye.
Just good people, man.
So 70s all done same charges.
Yeah.
And what's
Unlawfully handling.
So what's the evidence then? Obviously, I know it. Like, so what's the evidence that they're running with?
Right, the best of my ability, I'll tell you, and that's you can fill in.
Aye, Scott might be better
Yeah.
about it.
So this is right. So they've done the scrapings of the fingernails and the swabs, and when they were doing the test in the laboratories, then wherever they do it, allegedly, these swabs and cocktail sticks and all the rest of it, to do the test, to actually perform a test to prove that this is nitroglycerin, when you do that, it destroys that evidence. So then no one ever walked in the court and going, Exhibit A, it was all word. It was all here, right? So they walk into court and they stand up there and they swear on the Bible and everything else, and they say, we've done this test, it proved, and there you go.
But there's no actual.
Yeah, it's the SKUs test it's called, and I believe he was the expert that spoke to the validity of the tests in the Birmingham 6 case and the Maguire 7 case.
Yeah.
So it's the same expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the test supposedly is for the test positive for explosives.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what they fail to mention is the lamination on a pack of playing cards would set it off.
Certain boot polish,
a
maybe,
shiny
or
word top surface, because that was obviously in the Birmingham 6 case they said that they were covered
And
in
is
it.
there even any way that you would have known that this has been set up? Because obviously Patrick's saying it's destroyed. So is there any whose word is it? We just taking this guy's word for it?
the experts, like the copper kept saying to me, they don't make mistakes. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. You're a bomb maker, because he said so, because he done the test.
Fucking hell.
But the test destroys
I
whatever.
I know.
what I mean?
So that there's no way that you can, as you're saying, you're coming in and going, "There's the gun."
Yeah,
like
that's it. Yeah.
Like,
None
so
of that.
All you're taking is a guy's word for it.
Yeah.
Who
Word of mouth, was
I
it?
could probably guarantee, Scott, you might be able to fill me in on this. Probably done 99% of cases for the Crown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it was basically a
Yeah.
police.
Yeah, listen, he invented the test, and as I say, that's one of the problems with the SKUs test, is it destroys the sample in testing. But like I say, the false positives is the problem. Paddy and the rest of the Birmingham 6 were playing with playing cards on the train to go to a funeral, so their hands were covered and stuff off the lamination on the cards that would test positive for his test. So they're saying, well, you must have handled explosives because of this. And then other than that, I don't know if any of the Maguire 7 wrongfully confessed under the duress and the torture. Obviously some of the Birmingham 6 did, but other than what we've discussed already,
They beat the crap out of my mum and all. I'm absolutely crucified, I swear to God. And everyone got a beating. My dad, he was only a little guy, but similar to Paddy Hill, he always reminded me of Paddy. My dad, well, he could handle himself and all the rest. It didn't bother no one.
Right.
But he had 4 or 5 coppers beating the crap out. My mum had the same. Abused her terribly, I tell you. But she would never sign anything and admit. Not because we're tough and hard and all the rest of it. It's just they weren't right, mate.
Yeah, no,
it just weren't right. I know that.
what you're asking and what you're basically getting asked to. I mean, I know. Listen, I know that these people are trained to get it happen. Like myself, you say things in statements that you don't actually mean and stuff like that. That it happens. Do you know what I mean? They're trained to get it out of you. They're trained to get things out of you. So I'm not saying, but obviously, you guys have all kind of. So none of you have made any kind of stupid kind of no. And so basically, we're going to court. We've got this one witness, a special scientist. And what's his credentials? Is he a?
He's disgraced now in terms of his credentials, obviously by way of the putting right of these wrongful convictions. But at the time, it's him in his white coat saying that the Maguire family's hands were covered in residue for explosives.
But they never found they never found not one bit of trace of anything in the house. And as I said, 5 mile radius, but they swabbed the whole house from top to bottom. All the
And this is a bomb making factory.
Absolutely, and they never found a trace of it. Absolutely a trace.
I think
of
what
it.
you're struggling to understand, Sean, leave aside the expert and the white coat syndrome that the jury would probably buy into, and that's not a criticism of a layperson listening to a
And I think
supposed
this-
doctor, but the anti-Irish sentiment, think the kind of Muslim community in the UK today.
Yeah.
Obviously, his cousin's just been done for 2 bombs in 2 major cities, and the jury were desperate to convict.
I got to mention this. Yeah. So when they dropped the murder charge on my mum, and they're getting her now, right? They never found no traces on my mum's hands or fingernails, right? My mum had dermatitis, is it? Very bad skin, and she ended up in hospital with her bad hands, really red raw.
Aye.
And I remember going to visit her. So what it was suggested back in them days is that you put loads of cream on and you wear these plastic see-through disposable gloves when she was cleaning or doing things. They allegedly found traces on some gloves like them, right? Now, we got, my mum was told this many years afterwards, I think. When my mum was in the witness box giving her a little bit of evidence or whatever, when she was asked, and they held up some plastic gloves and they said, "Are these yours?" If my mum had said, "Well, they're similar to what I wear," there was a very good chance she might have got off. But because my mum turned around and said, "Of course, yeah, they're mine," that more or less put her away as well.
I know it's. Do you know what it is? It's like it's because you don't know the system,
Of course
right?
you don't.
And
Yeah.
you know it.
Yeah.
See, I've always said this before. See, good criminals, they know the system. They
Yeah.
know how to work it. They
Yeah.
know how, you know, like
How to
that's
work it.
that's why
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
get away with things.
Of
You know what I
course,
mean?
they know what them. Yeah.
And it's always like people that are maybe first offenders or
Yeah.
maybe no used to the system that will
Yeah.
say something stupid like that that then brings in,
Yeah.
and they know that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, right. So is this what the case was? Is basically this guy coming out
Yeah.
and saying that
Yeah.
that and
Nothing was ever
obviously-
found in the house.
and there's no witnesses and
Nothing at all. Absolutely no. And nothing at all.
was that unanimous?
What with the jury?
verdict, aye.
No, for me it weren't.
Right.
Everyone else. So I remember it went on for 6 or 7 weeks. How long it went on for? And so we're there, and the jury have gone out, and then they come back in after 3 or 4 days or whatever, and they lock us up by then. I get locked up,
Aye.
but it was some children's home down the road there somewhere, like, yeah. But that was the first time I've ever been locked up as well, like. So when the jury did come out, and I remember it clearly, obviously, of course I will, and it was guilty, 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 guilty. And my mum screamed, and she passed out, and they had to take her away, and then we all went downstairs to the cells again.
Aye.
I thought I'm guilty. I'm away with it. I'm going. And my dad's turned around to me. He's got, before he went up to try and find me mum and have a word. He said, "Listen, you may be going home." He said, "But they haven't decided on you. The jury hadn't made their mind up on me,
Right.
right?" And I said to my dad, "Well, I'm not going anywhere. I've come this far. And where am I going?
I know.
If everyone's getting locked up, where you send
I
it?"
know.
So, and I said to my dad, "I'll get this chair I've been sitting on. I'll throw it at the judge." And I said to my dad with a little, with a little smile on his face, as if as if to say, "I wish you could."
Aye.
But he said to me, "Just get home."
I know.
Right, like that. But anyway, I weren't going nowhere, so I went back up on my own. The jury took, I don't know how long, they took an hour to make their
Right.
mind. So I've gone up there and I'm standing up there on my own now, right? And they've said guilty. Boom, away you go. And it was the end of it. And I remember coming down, they stuck me in a cell with my brother, and I walked in like that going, "I'm guilty."
Aye.
He says, "I know." And I said, "How did you know?" He said, "Well, you wouldn't be here."
It's so sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, and it's like,
They had to sedate me, mum.
I know, I can't even, like, it's
Literally,
it's
sedate her.
just a total destruction of family.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a devastating thing to have to
Isn't it?
end of to be the victim of miscarriage of justice, but
Yeah.
to take a whole family,
Yeah.
like I say, it's unusual to say that you were in that position where you could have been acquitted.
Aye.
But would that have been any better or any worse? That
No, I
your
know,
whole
'cause you'd
family
have
went to
been- you'd have
jail
been
and you're on
probably-
your
you'd
own.
have been put in a home anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I would have went to Ireland, mate. That's where I would have went
so,
if I had got out.
so what, obviously, right, you're convicted. What's this, because I can only imagine what the screws would have been like with somebody who's been convicted
Oh,
of
that-
like
oh,
this
Jesus.
kind of crime.
And again, I'm going to I'm going to prison, aren't I? That's it. And I remember saying to my brother, and they let my dad come in before he went up to say goodbye to us, and he gave me his watch, a watch I always used to have as a kid, and that's the title of my book, My Father's Watch. Jesus.
Listen, it's hard. It's moving stuff. You can see the real devastating impact what happens to somebody. Like I say, Patrick, as he touched on before the podcast, he couldn't even tell the time. And his dad leaves him his watch before they get taken away to separate prisons. It's the most appalling abuse of power imaginable. The damage that's been done to an entire family of innocent people.
And I remember getting to the nick eventually I went to. Horrible bastards, obviously, like, you know. Geez, I wish I was a lot older fronting these people, I tell you, because I would have poked a few people in the fucking eye, I'm telling you. Horrible bastards. So I'm there, and I remember, like, as you do, they strip you naked and all that sort of stuff, and anything you do have, you got to hand it in. And I've said, can I keep my watch? My dad's watch. And he said, wait, how long you're here for 4 years? Like, he said, we ain't fucking going nowhere. You don't need to know the time. You know what I mean? And the watch was like put in a box or whatever they fucking do to it. And yeah. And that, sorry, and also he said, it's, your name. Well, my name's Patrick Maguire, isn't it? Right? That's all I knew. Your full name, right? Because they want all that, don't they? Right? It's all part of it. And I'm Patrick Joseph Paul Maguire. He said, couldn't your mum make her mind up then what to call you? I said, well, I'm named after saints. Right? He said, well, you ain't no fucking saint. Where have you just come from? Old Bailey. For what? Well, you know, like that. You fucker. And it was all about that. It was just full on. And I'm like I said, I'm in shock. Of course I am. But I don't know that. I've never been in this position before. You know, and when they're giving me the number, the prison number.
Was that a young offender? Did
no, I don't know if you know they knocked it down for good reason and all. It was a place called Ashford Remand Centre in Middlesex, notoriously known for being one bad bastard place. I didn't know that. I'd heard a few of my mates' older brothers might have done a few months there. You know, they had convicted prisoners there and all. But what was waiting for me was something else. Anyway, they had a special place for me.
So obviously, where is it they take you then, Patrick? Where is it you go?
Oh, this part.
Patrick, we can leave this
No,
part.
it's got to be said, mate. But this part always gets me. I didn't know it, but they locked me up in a cell. I was put in solitary, which I didn't know I didn't know it. I didn't know solitary. They told me they were going to stick me in a hospital, and I thought they were going to take me outside. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know prisons had. What do I know about prisons? I didn't know prisons had hospitals, but this weren't. This was solitary confinement for 23 hours a day for a month. I ended up doing. My first month in prison was in solitary with a fucking red light they left on every single night. And that haunts me to this day.
No, I can't.
You know what I mean? It really does.
I know. So did you get into mainstream population?
Eventually, because I asked.
Yeah.
After a month, and I said, and I did ask. I asked the screw one day. I said, "What am I doing here? Like in this?" Because I'd had one night across the normal part of the prison, right? I'd experienced something, and at the time, and I don't know what day it is. You know, this is I ended up having my 15th birthday there because we got sentenced on the 4th of March. My birthday's on the 22nd of March, so I didn't even know when my birthday came up.
Is this an adult prison you're in?
Well, there was a lot of adults there. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you know, I'm by far the youngest, by far, and every night was hard.
And obviously, I can imagine like the sentiment with other convicts wouldn't have been good, like because of what you were in for. Like,
yeah, well, eventually, but I mean,
I would have changed obviously over time,
Yeah.
but
this place, and I do try to describe it, and I've come up with this. If this wasn't hell itself, this place was it was hell's waiting room. How'd you do that? How'd you do that to a kid? And it's only since I've become a father, like 4 times over many years, that I think it hurts even more to inflict that on a child. You know what I mean? And even then I weren't a hard kid. I hadn't become tough and hard over them 18 months waiting to go to court and ended up in prison. You know, I hadn't. I was gonna. So as the month went on, I don't know it's a month, but I got to get out of here. Because this place was just killing me. It really was. And the governor used to do his rounds in the morning, you know. And when I say rounds, the door would open. There'd be half a dozen screws with him, and the screw would go, yeah, him there, and yeah, he's all right. And the door would lock. This was every morning. Didn't get a chance to speak to anyone. I don't know what I got to say. But as time was going on, I'm thinking, I've got to get out of here. This place is just, especially at night, it was so, that red light was just so hot. And it was the summer of 76, the heat wave, not that I was aware of it.
No.
So it was, and especially at night, it was, and that light, and yeah. So I said to myself one night, and I can never remember falling asleep in there. I must have just passed out with exhaustion. Was I cried for a whole month.
No, it's not. I mean, it's barbaric. There's
Right.
nothing there. It's torture.
So something came to me, and I thought, right, then when that governor comes in the morning, I'm gonna hold that door open. And I didn't know what I'd say. So he did, and as he was going, I grabbed that door and I said, listen, and I just pointed like that. Don't know where I was, and I said, the first night I came in, can I not go back over there? Right? And he went, all right. As simple as that. And I honestly think if I hadn't have asked, I would have still been there.
Yeah.
I would have still been there. And eventually I got out and they brought me over, and yeah, that's when the other fun starts. But I'm out in the open.
Aye.
It's real. You know what I mean? And not everyone was against her.
Aye. So that obviously we'll go into that, and obviously there was real IRA guys in
No,
there.
not so much in this place. That was to come later on. Yeah.
So how did you go in this place, Patrick? How did you go in?
Well, it's a big old place, and like I said, they've locked it down there. And anyone who knows it and spent time in there will never speak anything nice about this place. It was, people were topping themselves and everything. But there was a wing on one of the big tall buildings, 4 or 5 floors up, and it was a wing that had 10 cells in it, and it was H block they called it, and that's where the likes of me were kept, like IRA, murderers.
Because you've been, what do you call it? No class A.
Category A. Category A, mate. Absolutely. And I didn't know about all that. That didn't mean nothing to me. It weren't, you know. And so I was locked up there with these boys up there. But as it goes, these fellas up there were all right. You know what I mean, apart from one who tried his luck and it didn't fucking happen. But yeah, and I knew to mind my own business. And, you know, I learned as quick as you like.
No, you did. You have to adapt.
How to listen without really hearing, how to look without looking.
I know, you have to adapt.
It came like that.
I know.
And I had a few run-ins, but that was more me not playing the game, you know, because they tried it. I mean, I was a kid. I'm small. And a couple of people tried it on there, tried their luck, and I ain't having it.
Aye.
You know? And so in the early days, it was quite hard, but I weren't having it. And people showed, no, I don't want to use the word respect, but other cons would see that and they think, all right.
Aye.
You know? And any opportunity I got, I'd say, I never done nothing, you know that? I shouldn't be here.
When you talk about, I say this quite a lot, Patrick, on it, like in the jail, you'll get eaten alive if you don't learn a set of behaviours.
I know.
That don't set you well in this society, but you need them in there.
Oh, Jesus. And I didn't know about all that.
I know. I was very the same as you.
Didn't know. You know, like that bullshit when you're walking down the landing.
Aye.
And there's only enough room really for one of you.
Aye.
You got.
I know.
Jesus, all of that.
I know.
I just thought, and I used to remember going into myself thinking, what the fuck?
And obviously, a cat, you're in there with like the worst, like, and some hard guys.
Bloody hell, yeah.
You know what I mean? So listen, they probably looked at a 14-year-old, 15-year-old boy and went, you know what, that's respect that this boy's coming in here and actually handling this.
Yeah. And I was tiny. I mean, I was never a big lad, definitely not a big kid. I done a bit of training there eventually, but I was never a big.
So did it become like I'm no meaning, but did it become livable? Like,
yeah, it did. Of course, it does.
Like
it does.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but you're never off.
I know.
You're always on guard.
I know.
You know, and someone wants to be your mate, and then like that, you think you keep that at arm's length.
There's an agenda.
And I learned all that sort of stuff very, very quickly, and never let me guard down. And I'm looking a lot further ahead of me than if you're there. I'm looking down there as well.
I know.
You know what I mean? And I've worked out who your mates are.
Aye.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff. This is just the big boy stuff,
No,
really.
mine, because it's like stuff that you can't teach.
Yeah.
It's only in that environment
Yeah.
that you learn it, and I try and explain that to people at times when you talk about prison, and I like that category. I'm not even trying to kid on. I know what you're talking about because I don't like that's totally different in a different world to probably what I was in, and. But I know what you mean by you need to like just learn very
Well,
quickly.
you either get in a corner and stay there
I know.
and get into a ball, or you face it.
Aye.
You know, and I didn't want to be facing it. I didn't want this.
Nene's want to face it,
I'm
but do
telling
you know the thing is, Patrick, it's testament again to yourself because I look back at the 15 years I done right,
Yeah.
and I do go, I don't know how I done that,
Yeah.
and I honestly don't. I look back at it and I go, like I don't know how I done it. I wasn't a hard man in there.
Yeah.
I wasn't like I was well liked,
Yeah.
and I got
Yeah.
on with people, and
Yeah.
I met some really good pals and stuff. But I do look back at it and go, like, how did I
Yeah.
do that? And probably you're the same. Like
Yeah.
you look back
Yeah.
and go, like, how did I get through
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
And obviously it things will haunt you, and it's
Yeah.
the same as me. You
Yeah.
get your demons.
Just that one. That's what. There's so much that's happened, and there's so many stories. You know, I could tell, but nothing, absolutely nothing matches that moment for me. That cell. That's
No, that's to break you, isn't it? That's
Oh.
that's to break you. And obviously, like you can see the emotion. And did you witness anything in there like that you would have went? Because I remember, like I've spoken about it before on a few different podcasts, Patrick. When I was younger, you get into fights when you were 15, 16, and 17, and you'd been in fights and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I remember the first time I seen somebody getting slashed,
Right.
like
Oh, I've seen all sorts of
stone
things going on.
cold sober.
Yeah.
I remember the shock, like whoa,
Yeah.
like seeing it. But I remember then how quickly it became normalised.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if that was the same.
No,
as
it did
you.
without doubt. I remember the first month of coming out of the solitary, maybe the month or two or whatever, and then you start experiencing and the smells and the noise and all the rest of it. It becomes like
I know,
no different no more.
I know.
And I soon, and this is quite sad for me as it goes, I soon forgot whatever I knew.
I know.
School, I'd forgot any
Right.
memories of school.
I know.
The smells of it, the food, my mates going and coming back, walking through the school was deleted.
Aye.
I swear to God, it took me many, many years to get that back, and that was through the writing. It didn't mean anything. It had no part of my life. Anything I'd experienced, anything I'd been taught by my dad, my mother, how I conducted myself, that cell, that solitary confinement, it drained all that away because it weren't going to be useful.
No,
Right? It weren't going to come in handy for me when I got out of that cell.
no.
And eventually, the walk.
No,
I never walked
definitely.
like that. But all of a sudden,
Aye,
I'm doing
I
that.
know.
I'm walking like this, and I'm looking at fellas your size. You know what I mean? And I'm looking, but what they don't know is my heart's going
know.
like that. But I have to keep my eye on you,
I know.
and that's all it is. And then you go about your business. But
Aye.
I'm experiencing that day in and day out for the first few
As
months.
a kid, but
Yeah.
it's like this is
Yeah.
it's a different,
Yeah.
and it's like. I mean, obviously, at this moment, I know that Tommy Robinson, right, is a controversial character,
Yeah.
whatever way you want to look at him, right, and I don't align with him politically. I don't
No.
I don't like his views on Israel and that, right.
No.
I'm pretty sure the guy's all right, whatever, right, but the way what they're doing to him is with the solitary confinement and
Yeah.
stuff like that as well. I tweeted the other day and I says it's out of order.
Yeah.
What they're doing because. It's torture.
It
Do
is,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you're in for. Like
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
I know he's controversial and
Yeah.
he's played a documentary. Do you know what I mean? And he shouldn't have. And
Shouldn't be doing
but
it.
I know he'll be going through maybe something as bad as that, but he'll be going through similar
Yeah.
torture. And
Yeah.
and you think they learn, wouldn't they? That these things
Yeah.
traumatize you.
Well, I'll tell you this now, and it's never going to happen. But if all of a sudden you said, "Well, let's see how this is," and all these lights made this room red, raw, right? I'd be out of here before it. I wouldn't be able to sit in this room if all of a sudden it
I know what you
became red.
Aye.
You know what I mean? And as an artist, right, if I could just say this, as an artist, it took me years and years and years to get hold of that colour, which was abused as much as I was
Aye.
as an artist, and turn it and use it in that sense.
Aye.
I've done some artwork where it's really, really heavy and
Aye.
it's in your, but I've also used the red. It took me years to do it as red should be used as well.
Aye.
Like, you know, Valentine's Day or just doing,
Aye,
you know,
aye, like, I know
right.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Like where red is a beautiful colour,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to you,
yeah.
it's no a beautiful colour. Like,
Yeah.
but
you know, and I'm
And-
still working on that. I mean,
of course,
you know,
and you never will,
Yeah.
Patrick. You know yourself. See, when you go through these things, you never will. You never will beat it. Like you can only learn to live with it and and accept things.
Yeah.
And
but I just
um,
want that part. I really do. I really do want that part. Because I'm going to talk about it again. You know, I've done it with you. And I know I'll be talking about it. And every time it's that, I just want to better deal with that part of my life. I really do. I want to better tell this story about this cell and that place, and talk about it and be comfortable with it. You know.
I believe you will.
Yeah.
I do honestly, and I was really had to hold that crying in when you were like that. To be honest, Patrick,
So raw, mate. It really is, and it's not me, the adult, that is hurting.
It's that
that
child.
child, it's that
It's
kid.
of course, it is. It's
Jesus
that traumatized
Christ.
child inside. That's
God, who would want to do that? And it was the build up to it as well. But I could have handled all that, I'm sure. You know.
It's a way like look, you've actually see when you've got it, you've actually handled prison. You've handled like the stuff that's like you've handled the environment, that toxic environment, the volatile
Well, I became
environment.
a baroner selling tobacco. I was doing all that in prison.
Aye.
You know what I mean? And selling other bits and pieces.
But this bit is obviously the bit that's haunting you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that, as I say, we've had guys on here. I don't know if you maybe don't know Johnny Steele, but Johnny Steele's, you kind of remind me of Johnny in a way that Johnny Steele done like, I don't even know, 3 years in solitary confinement, and they had him naked up in cages in Inverness and really brutalised Johnny. And I think you'd actually like Johnny, but it's, I don't know how he's still sane.
Yeah.
And it reminds you that kind of reminds me your strength, and that kind of reminds me of his strength. And I mean that in a nice way, because I've got the highest respect for Johnny Steele. Like I just don't know how he's still sane. And it's similar to yourself. It's like
But that was my first. You see, I've often trying to heal myself. I've tried to think of all sorts of things to do, and I've actually said to myself, if that solitary confinement had happened to you, say 2 years into your sentence, it may not have been as hard on me, right? I've come off the street more or less. I haven't experienced any shit at all. I don't know. I've never been inside a prison. Only visiting my mum and dad when they were on remand, right? But that's the visiting.
I know.
And that weren't. I didn't find that
totally different.
Totally different. So this was my first introduction to something, you know, after being, you know, laughed at by the screw with me dad's watch, giving me a prison number, all them sort of things. That's the basic stuff, like, you know.
Humanising.
But just getting there and to be forgotten about, which no one bothered me.
I think you
I've
were
got me
protected,
food.
Patrick, with how naive you were at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got
obviously-
you scrubbing the cell 3 times a day. They're taking the piss. I never knew that. I couldn't lie on my bed. They took it out during the day anyway, and you couldn't lie on it because it weren't there. But you had to make your bed a certain way, blankets folded, and I never knew any different. I thought everyone did this, and I had it down to a T. I had it down to a T so much that it pissed them off, that every time they'd come in, they'd get it and throw it about. It had to be done again. But I'd done it so perfectly.
So sad,
I
isn't
don't
it?
even wish to upset
You know the locker? Remember the lockers?
Aye.
Your little vest and your
Mhm.
all in order like that. And I'd done it perfectly. I'd scrubbed that cell where there was nothing. You could see your face in it. But they'd come in, do it again. And I never knew any different. But as prison life went on, and they were doing that shit, have that.
Aye.
I ain't doing nothing, mate.
I'm sorry, on you go, Scott.
No, I was saying you were kind of protected by her, and I don't wish to upset you further with this, Patrick.
Yeah.
But when he was told by the screws that he was going to the hospital, that's not something you realised that you weren't in the hospital wing until adulthood, until you'd
I'd done a documentary with
BBC Northern Ireland.
Yeah, BBC Northern Ireland. It was Stephen Nolan's.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I didn't want to do it at first. The whole family did it. It was they came over to London. They done this program, like, you know, really in depth stuff, and it was, you know, and we've done many of them before. But I was in a bad place, right? I weren't doing anything. I was doing plenty of art, but I was in a very bad place, like, you know. And the art always kept me alive, and it was the very first one ever that I refused to do. I said, I just can't, like, you know. So he left it open. He said, look, we're leaving it open if you want to do it. And all of a sudden I got my act together, and I flew over to Ireland. I was there and back again, and it was on that show that we were doing like this, just chatting. And I was telling him the part. I said, yeah, I was in they took me over to this hospital. He was the one. He said to me, Pat, that weren't, mate. That was solitary confinement.
Aye, you're in the digger. Well, we call it a digger in
Right,
Scotland.
right.
Like,
He said that was solitary confinement.
is it the box or something in Scotland? Something down in
God
England.
knows.
I can't know.
But yeah, the worst part of your kind of long and drawn out complex trauma, which was that as a low point, and that red cell at night, that was kind of put away and no opened up, and you were
Even when I wrote my book, and I do cover this area, but nowhere near that I know about it now.
Aye.
You know what I mean? You know, I have wrote about it and said, but with no detail that I can give you now. So it took all these years for it the surface, mate. You know, and
that's came for like high MI5 or something, like just that's breaking you. That's like torture. That's torture tactics. It's like that's the stuff they do.
What did they want me to do? What they?
I don't know.
Either that or
Were they hoping
didn't
that
want
I'd come out here again? Yes, pointing fingers.
That's what I think.
Who knows? I don't.
Or listen, they fitted up a child for the most horrific crime, and then would it make the story worse if they then put them in a category A prison and some harm come to you? A 14-year-old kid isn't supposed to be there. Obviously solitary confinement is no a better place, but it was maybe just by way of his age they were keeping him away for his own protection.
Mate. So right, we'll try and move on a wee bit, right? So like obviously, so you've done so do you when do you move? Because obviously the part I've spoke to you earlier about, right? Like obviously the part that shocked me was when the guy for the IRA came in and he said, look, they're innocent.
Well, that was that was in Wormwood Scrubs, and it would have been, I don't know, maybe a year or so after being convicted. Prison to prison visits to see me mum and dad, right? So it was over a year, but after being convicted, that came up, and reluctantly they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to take us nowhere. So anyway, so in the middle of 5:30 in the morning, you get ghosted, and me and my brother are shipped out, and we end up in Wormwood Scrubs. But I wouldn't say I'm hardened by now, but I know this.
No,
I'm no mug now. I'm totally different. I'm different from that kid that went into that cell. I'll tell you, and we went to church on a Sunday, you know, and a lot of people did to get out of the cell. You know that. And it was on this occasion what me and my brother were walking in with our escort into the big church, and at the back of the church, at least 30 or more. And these are the IRA boys. These are the lads who've confessed. They do it and they don't care. They get caught and it's all part of the program, right? And I remember walking in with my brother with our little escort, and they're all category A and they've all got their security with them. And the smallest guy out of this lot, he's come marching over like that with his little security mob, and he apologised. He said, on behalf of the Irish Republican movement, we apologise for you lot being it. We said, we know you never done it. We told them you never done it, which they did in court, right? And but while you're here, no harm will come to you. Well, as I say, I've been in prison over a year now, so I don't need any favours. You know what I mean? I can sort things out myself. But that was the first time, and probably the only time, that anyone's ever acknowledged that we never done this. They
And
knew that.
I don't care what MD says, right? See if the IRA know that.
Yeah.
MI5 not?
Of course they do.
Because obviously
They all watch each
there's
other.
been books, and we've
Yeah.
we've actually had like Neil Mackay on here before, and he spoke about the kind of high profile and the high up
Yeah.
kind of moles
Yeah.
that they had. So they knew
Yeah.
you never done it.
They
You
knew,
know what
they
I
knew
mean?
for the
Like,
word go.
They
They never
knew
done
from
it.
the word go.
And this again to quote Paddy, it was a public outcry that got
Yeah.
all these fitted up
Yeah.
because somebody had to pay for this. And they
so
couldn't.
how Scott? I mean, it gets you angry because it's how do you get the public to, because obviously you highlight things like this, but how do you get the public to believe that this happens? Like,
Yeah.
like why is
don't
there
know.
something that
Yeah. Well, the only answer I can give to that, those who knew us and that has grown up with us, like I'm talking about in the area that we
Aye.
lived in, they didn't believe it. But there was nothing they could do.
I know.
Only by giving support in the sense of, but they couldn't even do it. Maybe they were scared as well because there was quite a few Irish people around the area,
Aye.
and I could understand them not
You're getting it as well.
getting too involved.
Aye.
But some of them really did. Some put money forward to get my mum out on bail when it came up.
Aye.
And I've learned this over the later years. There were some very good people that did support us, but they had to do it in a certain way
Aye.
because they were scared.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they know that they're lifting people off the street
Yeah,
for
but if-
something they didn't do.
No.
Yeah.
But you're asking how there's public appetite for these things. A mass murder's taking place, an
Yeah.
atrocity, and the public's whipped up into a frenzy. Someone has to pay for this. You know yourself, having looked at the problem of causes of miscarriage of justice, Sean, that juries are predisposed to convict. The crime sometimes is that horrific that somebody's got to pay for it, and who can the jury convict apart from the person sitting in the dock?
Mm.
In Patrick's case, they had a ordinary London Irish family, 14-year-old boy, and somebody had to pay for making the
Yeah.
bombs that went off in Woolwich and Guildford, and
Not-
the
yeah,
police and the
yeah.
experts are saying it's
Yeah.
used, so it must be used.
Not letting the jury off, and I don't know, right? But again, I'm looking at it from this point of view as an adult now, many years later, but also with a bit of me as a 14-year-old sitting there in the dock, seeing it all going on. Now I believe that it wasn't the jury that found us guilty. That had been done long time before that. But it was just all based on forensic scientists sort of stuff, and nothing was brought in, as we said earlier on. They were just nodding away, like my dad. God rest him. I remember hearing him say this. He said, and this was 2 weeks after our case, 2 weeks into our trial. He said, "They're that good. They've convinced me of my guilt."
Aye.
Right? And do you know what I mean?
Aye.
So I think it was.
No, I like see in my case, right, which is it's that I'm not even trying to compare it to yours. Like there's no comparison, but I still suffered a miscarriage of justice, and there was one lawyer in particular, a guy called Paul McBride, who Scott will know, but his charisma and his not legal knowledge and his ability to control a room was phenomenal. Like I like, and the way that you can see him
Running the trial.
like running like to the extent where you're like you're sitting there impressed by this guy who's going to get you to jail, like going to like convert you something you've never done, and they're that impressive. And I get so they're probably, I don't know, but probably top QCs and that would have been involved in that case.
Well, yeah,
absolutely.
Who was involved in ours, right? The judge, so Donaldson, wasn't it? But the prosecution, Sir Michael Havers, top man in the country at that particular time, he was the prosecution in the Guildford 4 case. Same judge, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's never heard of. They don't do it. So you had the prosecution, so they know all about us anyway, right? But they know all the ins and outs of us. And this is the prosecution and the judge that are going to be in our case. So they've done us before it even started, because we'd been mentioned in the Guildford 4, my mum, and all that stuff.
So obviously take you past, right, and obviously like to when you you do get your conviction quashed. Does the Guildford 4, did they get theirs quashed before you guys, or did you?
They were
No,
first.
they did. They were first, weren't they?
They
Yeah.
were first. Yeah, we spoke about it a bit the last time, Sean.
Oh,
And you spoke a bit about the name of the father earlier on. It's a kind of Hollywood dramatization of
Yeah.
of the real facts.
Yeah.
But what is true is that Gareth Pierce, who was Paddy's and Jerry's lawyer, went to see the secret police to look at evidence, and just by luck, there's a little luck
Yeah.
involved in overturning a miscarriage of justice. The secret policeman was off with the flu, and the policeman says, just you go in and look at everything and tell me what you want to photocopy, rather than have her taken to the evidence that she's allowed to see. And she found all this material never to be disclosed to the defence. And that was the first domino that cleared the Guildford Four.
Yeah.
Is getting her hands on that evidence that the police knew at the time that
Aye.
Jerry and the rest of the four were alibis for the bombings.
Yeah.
And they suppressed that and rather tortured them to confess. So if it's natural that if the Guildford Four are innocent, then the Maguires are innocent,
Yeah.
and that
But the same behaviour happened in ours and all. There was stuff that wasn't that the prosecution had and knew, should have shared it with our lot, and they
the
didn't.
non-disclosed
And
like
all
that,
that,
no,
yeah,
aye.
yeah.
So it's obviously so you get the conviction quashed and stuff, and then how's life adapting? How's life outside, Patrick? How do you start coping with that? Do you hit the ground running, or what? Like,
Well, I remember, like I said, because I'd been out of prison a good while by then. By the time we got to the Court of Appeal,
so sorry, I'll take you back then to
Yeah.
like when you came out of prison. How was that trying to adapt back into the society? How did you find that?
I'm sure I found it hard. The last time I was out and about, as you say, and I went back to the area I grew up in where we got nicked. The last time I was up and down, walking down the main road, I was with my mum. Not holding her hand maybe by that age, you know what I mean? But, so now I'm out, somewhat a young man. I'm 19, back to the area where we got nicked. But like, as I said to you, everything prior to us being nicked, and especially going to prison, it seemed it had been like deleted, you know? I felt that, like not being reborn or anything like that, but anything I'd done prior, I never got to pick up again. You know what I mean? All my mates had grown up and got older. A lot of them have got kids.
Aye.
Some are married.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When I left, they were 14-year-olds. You know what I mean? And but the police, like I say, the police picked up quite soon from where they left off, because when I was on bail for 18 months, they would pick me up and beat the crap out of me 4 times a week. They'd wait
Still?
outside school.
Even when you're like when you've been
The prison, Jesus, they came for me like a, yeah. I mean,
Aye.
first of all, it was the local police, the
Aye.
same mob. It'd be a car that would pass me and stop, and they'd give me verbal abuse. Why don't you go back to Belfast, you Irish bastard, and all them sort of things. But I'm a little bit bigger now, you know, I'm not a
Aye.
kid no more.
Aye.
And I say, go on, fuck off
Aye.
like that. And that'd be it. But then as the months went on, well, within a couple of months, they'd wait for me outside, coming out of a pub or walking down the road. I'm telling you, they'd just pull up in the back of the van, beat the shit out of me. But I'm a little bit older, so I can throw a little bit back.
Aye.
But you know the score. Once you do that,
know.
you're going to get a few more on top of you.
I know.
So, and that went on for forever. That went on and off.
How long was that? That obviously just you're going to tell us. How long did that last?
Oh, up until my late 30s. Into my late 30s, early 40s. Serious. It got that bad where in the end, Alistair Logan, the solicitor at the time for us, great family friend member and that, we made an appointment with the local police, the Howe Road. Reluctantly, they didn't want to have it. And I remember meeting the top copper in that police station, and a couple of these uniform officers were there and all. And we more or less sat down and said, look, because I was at it by now, right? I was, you know, I got into crime and all sorts of things like, because I was rebellious, you know, I don't.
And you've learned a lot of behaviours in the jail.
In the
and all
nick
that.
and all
Aye,
that
aye,
sort
aye.
of stuff, you know. And the copper said to Alistair, he said, look, we know this fella here ain't no angel. And Alistair said, well, your boys ain't either. So it was made a bit of a truce.
Mhm.
I can't believe it. And even Alistair, next time we meet up, I'll get him to tell you the story. And afterwards, Alistair said to me, he said, Jesus Christ, that was something out of a movie, you know?
Aye.
And I was giving it to the copper, you know, it stopped eventually.
Aye.
But
Did it see once the kind of convictions were quashed and it started coming out, like the truth and stuff
Yeah.
like that? Did it kind of calm down then?
it did, well, the physical stuff started, and then they went back to how they started it. It started to filter out and stop, and it would just end up being verbal stuff, you know? So
Aye.
I'd be walking, going through the park with one of my kids. He was 6 months old, in a pram, and the police would come in and they'd all right, what you got in there then? Does it belong to you? And we'll get his fingerprints now. But by then, I was quite happy to turn around and go, fuck you.
Aye.
Or I would say to them, park up and we go around the corner here and have it if you want it, you know? And they wouldn't. You know what I mean? By then, they'd move on, like, you know?
It's obviously Scott like was filling me in and telling me like art basically saved you for a lot of stuff in your artwork.
Absolutely.
And, that was a massive part in. So can you tell us a wee bit about your art? And
Yeah,
how
well,
that
as a
kinda,
kid, like I said to you, the three things I was good at was playing football, chasing girls, and drawing pictures. And I was doing cartoons, copying the Dandy, the Beano, you know, just copying stuff. And every now and again, coming across something that I'm my own little character, you know, nicking a bit off Dennis the Menace and a bit of him and adding it on. And my dad loved it and always encouraged it, you know. And but when we got nicked and we were on bail for 18 months, I never done anything at all. School was out the window. You know what I mean? Nothing mattered to me no more. And I didn't do no artwork, none at all. And it was when I did get banged up, and it was a month or so of coming out of solitary confinement, I've got to start writing letters to my parents. Like, you know, I got a letter, and I remember saying to the screw, what am I doing with this? He said, well, you got to write, you know, write to whoever you want. Write your mum, dad, and all the rest of it. And it just so happens that the cell they put me in at the beginning was with this fella, a few years older than me. He'd burnt down his public school. He'd gone back and burnt down his school, like, you know. And he was a posh kid. He knew how to write and all the rest of it. And he saw how frustrating I was because I didn't know what to do. The only thing I ever say to my parents was yes, no, and why not? I mean, I never wrote. I never got that far in school. And so he showed me how to put a letter together. But as you know, it's the same old stuff. And you're telling lies from the off. I'm all right, of course I am.
No.
So on the back of the letter, you know, the way the pages open up, I started drawing cartoons, like nicking the cartoons out of a magazine and redoing it bigger. And I've got all these letters. I've got like 4 years of, and I would send 4 letters a month. You know, you got two freebies, didn't you? Down the canteen, you could buy.
Well, they stopped. Well, when I was in, they stopped. You were allowed them on remand. You used to get the free ones on remand. I don't know if you remember that. They used to call them pigeon post up here.
Yeah,
and that was because it used to take fucking 5 days and that to get there. Do you know what I mean? But no, they didn't. I think no, you're right. You did. You got one. You got one.
You got one a week.
You did.
You got one a week. So I would.
You're
and
right,
then I would
right.
buy 2 from the canteen.
But and the way it worked with us is it just went on the money for a stamp.
Yeah,
just went on to your
that's it.
wage.
Yeah, but and that's what I've done. I used to do these cartoons on the back, and like I said, me and my dad kept all them, obviously, and I've got them all now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You'll need to send me some, and then we can obviously show some on.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best with that. Yeah,
I mean?
absolutely.
So send me some.
Yeah.
So obviously, like I think we're coming up kind of near it, kind of ended the thing, and I would like to just kind of see what your points are on the system now, and why would anybody think that was there ever any kind of apology that you got? Did you ever get an apology?
Well, yeah. I mean, Tony Blair, he stood up in the House of Commons. I don't know, back in the day, and publicly said that we were all innocent and we didn't do it and all this. But I remember coming out of a court of appeal, when our names got cleared and, you know, absolutely cleared. And I remember coming out to have a fag. And I went to the appeal court every single day for how many weeks it was on for. And I remember coming out after it said, yes, you're all innocent. I was coming out for a fag and the media were out there, really a lot of them, like, they rushed me and they're all very excited. Like, and they're going, Pat, so how do you feel now? You must be so... And I said to them, do you think I've been waiting 20 odd years for people in there to tell me I'm innocent? I said, I've known that from day one, right? From the day they came. I said, what I want to know is why this happened. Why was it allowed to happen for so long?
No.
And I've never had that.
Do you know Tony Blair? I hope somebody doesn't quote me wrong on this here, right? But I'm pretty sure Tony Blair made a statement, something down the line of, I would rather see one. No, I'd rather see like.
It said that a real miscarriage of justice is when a guilty man goes free, which is an inversion of Blackstone's principle that the law should be prepared to let 10 guilty men go free, not to not to
Aye.
have one wrongfully convicted
Aye.
person.
He
But he
said-
said the
aye.
real miscarriage of justice and the real problem with miscarriages of justice are that too many guilty people walk.
That's right.
Really? Yeah.
Aye. That was what,
Yeah.
so. Obviously, it was. I mean, you probably know yourself. It's just it's a fake kind of like
It's an empty
apology.
apology.
It's an
Of
empty
course it is.
apology.
Didn't mean nothing to me.
Nah,
I only went that day because my mum went. My
Aye.
mum wants the apologies,
Of course,
and she's still
I
waiting
know,
for the
of course.
police,
Aye.
whoever, the Metropolitan, the Guildford, whoever you like, but the police as a whole,
They never apologise.
never, absolutely never. Me, I don't give a
Shocking.
monkeys. I don't. I'm not.
No, I know,
You
I
know?
know, but I know.
And
but
I've never. And can I
Aye.
think it's important for me to say this. From the day this happened to us, and especially after that Guildford police station and all that abuse there, I would never try to convince you that I'm innocent.
Aye.
I'll tell you the story,
Aye.
right? I know,
Aye.
and I've never throughout my life tried to convince anyone other than that.
Aye.
If you want to listen to me, I'll tell you. But
I know
I'm not
exactly-
trying to convince
I
you.
know exactly.
You know
how
what I
you feel. I think
You get to a
I don't know
point
if
where
you get. I don't know if you get this at the start. I really wanted to tell people. You tell people at the start and all
Yeah.
that, and then I think you realise that when you're in prison, probably in a cat it's worse.
Yeah.
Everybody's dealing with their own shit.
Yeah.
So they don't want to hear you.
No,
like,
no.
Or maybe you'll get the odd
The
person.
only
who wants to
no,
hear
I
it,
never
but-
did. Sorry, the only time I gave
Aye.
it was when
Aye.
I was down the punishment block.
Aye.
I got in trouble,
Aye.
right, to say the least, in
Aye.
prison on many
Aye, aye.
occasions. When I was in front of that governor, and then you say, yeah, I plead guilty. I did call
Aye.
that screw a wanker. In
Aye.
fact, I call him a fat wanker. I'd always say to the governor, right? I'd say to him, because he'd be screaming and shouting now, right?
Aye.
Get him out. And I'd say, you do realise I shouldn't be here in the first place. And I'd get another week for just answering that, for saying that. So any
Mental.
opportunity I got to official people,
Mhm.
I would do that,
Aye.
right? And to this day, I've never tried to convince anyone of anything.
Aye.
You want to know? I'll tell you.
Aye.
But I know. You know
No,
what I
I
mean?
know, and I think it's how it's even looking at if you take it in this day and age, why the lack of accountability that they're willing to take.
Yeah.
You've never done an apology for the police,
Yeah.
an empty apology for Tony Blair, who we all know,
Yeah.
they don't even know what he is.
Yeah.
But like, why would the system? I'll ask you this, Scott, because maybe you can like you're hanging there. Why should the public believe that this, obviously, maybe not as horrific as this,
Yeah.
but why this wouldn't happen in a modern day?
Yeah, I think the type of corruption that we see with the police, the kind of overt abuse of power that led to all these Irish people and
Yeah.
and London Irish people that were
Well,
wrongfully,
sorry, mate. go
so
on.
that were wrongfully convicted. It operates in a slightly different way, and but in response to all these cases, what I've been trying to get across is that a public outcry got all these Irish people wrongfully convicted, and it wasn't until the truth started to come out by way of investigative journalists and
Yeah,
Gareth Pearce
yeah.
and other lawyers, the public
Cardinal Hume,
the public outcry
Robert
changed to
Keyes.
the public outcry was
Yeah.
these people need to get out, and
Yeah.
the state needs to answer for what they've done to these
The
people.
IRA don't do this. The IRA, when the IRA, this is as much as I do know. When the IRA got caught in the past, right, when they were getting nicked, and then boys who apologised on behalf of it all, when they went to court, they turned their back, don't they? Physically turn and don't recognise the court.
Aye.
But on this occasion, the Beltman Street gang we're talking about,
Aye.
IRA unit, right?
Aye,
This little guy I was to meet many years later, he's actually turned round and faced the court and said to them, on this occasion, I'm going to speak to you. By the way, all those people you got locked up, they never done it. They're not members of the IRA. We done it. And they could tell for,
Was that in the middle of the court he done that?
yeah, before, right at the beginning, when you plead guilty or not.
Wow.
He said the Maguires are innocent, the
All,
Guildford Four are innocent,
and they made
Farnham
statements, they
Six
could
are
tell you exactly what
And
route,
as you say, they never ever recognised the court, and then that occasion.
on
of doing
one,
it.
on this,
Aye.
just this occasion. And this was the guy we were the meeting,
Aye.
Wormwood Scrubs many years later,
Aye.
you know?
and this never led to an appeal at that stage.
Yeah.
Patrick,
No, we all done our time. Mum and Dad done their time.
But as
Yeah.
you say, it's like they told them things that they.
That only they would know.
Aye.
You know what I mean? It's
Aye.
like, only they would know what sort of whatever shape it was or whatever they do. I don't
Aye.
know. I don't even know what they do.
Aye.
But they could tell the police exactly things that only the bombers would know.
And what like
Now they told them, yeah, go on, you're just trying to get your mates out of prison. You know what I mean? Serious, that's what they turned around.
Yeah.
They might have been a bit more technical than that.
I
but
know,
they
I know,
basically
I-
turned around and said, no, you're just trying to get your friends out. You know what I
But
mean?
the IRA were renowned for taking responsibility for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
things
It's
they've
all
done.
part of it, isn't it?
That,
I'm
like-
sure they don't want to get caught.
Of
Right?
course. Of
But
course,
when they
aye.
do, they go into this
Aye.
other routine of like, well, we're not going to moan and groan about it. We've
Aye.
done it and we're proud to do it. You know what I mean?
The police knew that
of
the
course they
Balkan
did.
Street gang done
Yeah.
it whilst they were fitting up
Yeah.
your family
by
and
19,
Jerry.
by
Is
19.
it just that they think they just they were never going to catch them?
Well, they've already went some way to start fitting up Jerry.
They've already done what they've done to all of
And
us.
again, yous are no criminals, yous are no terrorists. They can get evidence against you, the circumstantial
Yeah.
evidence about your mum's
Yeah.
gloves, what Jerry said about his Aunt Annie's place.
Yeah.
They were easier to fit up than the actual terrorists,
Yeah.
and the police admitted that to the
Yeah.
to your appeals
Yeah.
lawyer. They said that the IRA were too surly to be
Is that
interviewed,
what they said? Did
too
they?
too surly,
Mm.
to try and get a confession out of. This is anti-terrorist cops interviewing terrorists, and the word they used was they were too surly.
Yeah.
They would rather go after you.
Just because they knew they were getting the fuck all out the
Yeah.
IRA?
Yeah.
That's mental. And
Mental.
is
And the public appetite is obviously somebody must pay
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
And you were unfortunately the
Is
the
there ever
innocent people that were
been
picked.
Scott then, like, obviously we know that Mojo was built and which is an amazing thing, and like Paddy and all that, like the stuff that happened that we're grateful for, do you know what I mean, on the back of this, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, we've got stuff that we're grateful for, and that's helped so many other miscarriage of justice victims. But has there ever been any police went to the jail that fitted
No,
you up, or any
please.
I think
Anyway.
many people got a promotion off the back
Oh,
of the
yeah.
convictions
Yeah.
for these cases that we've
Yeah.
been discussing this afternoon.
So Michael Havers was made general. What do they call it? Top. Yeah, he got
the
promoted.
Justice Secretary,
Yeah.
or the top
Attorney
Lord
General.
Advocate,
The equivalent,
Attorney
the English
General.
equivalent
Yeah, he
of the
was-
Lord
he was-
Advocate.
Lord Advocate,
The judge in the two cases, the same judge, he was appointed Knight of the whatever they do. You know what I mean? They're all given a shield and a sword and stately home in the
So
countryside.
there was not one person who like ever even
Sent to
held,
prison, stuck in a cell. No, they weren't. No.
which makes you sick, doesn't it? Because you just even go.
Well, I would have rather. I tell you the truth
Do
here.
you know what, Patrick? I swear to God, like, see just your whole demeanour and the whole way that you've handled
Well,
yourself.
before you say that, can I just say this? I would, not now, but for many years, I would have liked to have had, out of all the coppers I ever met and that abused me, I would have liked that there was, for many years, I would have liked to have had 20 minutes when I got to be a bit of
Aye.
not 14 no more.
Aye.
I would have liked to have had 20 minutes with that copper. A fair one,
Aye.
toe to toe,
Aye.
and I swear to God, I would have done it.
Aye.
And that would have suited, that would have done me. I
Aye.
swear, but that's gone now.
No,
I don't
know,
think like
I
that
know,
no more.
I know.
I
know.
really
and,
don't.
And I honestly can't commend you. I honestly, like, it's remarkable how far you've come on, and I think
Well, that's my mother.
aye.
Thank my mum for that.
I know, and do you know what? I think my partner and my mother, my family as well. And it's you're only lucky about the support network you've got.
Absolutely.
The support network. If you don't have a support network, you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
You're never
It's
going
crucial
to
with surviving these things is having a family, Lena.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you'll see Scott a lot in
Yeah.
Mojo, like the
Clients
guys
that have got nobody
aye.
are lost.
Yeah.
And again, you can relate to your family.
Yeah.
When
Well, my
you-
mum was, like I said, more or less, if they could have crucified her, nailed the two across, they would have done, right? And it's only my mum, the strength of my mother. And for years and years, over the years, my mum would say to me every now and again, she'd say, son, I know how angry, because I was getting up to all sorts of things, and she'd say to me, I know you're angry, I know this, but that anger will only eat you alive. That will destroy. And she used to say it so gently. And and eventually I took that on board.
Aye.
If it wasn't for my mother, the strength that woman had and has, then I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you. I swear to God.
I can relate to it in a small, like, I'm not trying to say like my case is anything like yours, but like I remember when my partner said to me, when we're sitting at a visit, Patrick, and my partner said to me,
So
Sean, you're going to need to accept this.
Yeah.
I was like it was like after I'd lost my appeal, and she went, Sean, you're going to need to accept, and I got a wee bit angry when I went.
Yeah.
I was like, what? I was like, I can't
I know.
believe you fucking say that. Like,
I
what
know.
are you talking about? Like, accept it. And she's like, John, this is going to kill you.
Yeah.
If you look, and that I started like reading books about personal growth and acceptance and trying to, and obviously you know yourself, it doesn't go away, but you learn to live with and cope with things
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
bit better. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but no, it's fascinating to hear that side of the story, because I've never ever heard that side of the story. It's like it's like a side of the story that I've never ever.
The Maguires are often lost in the
Aye,
in the big
definitely.
picture.
Well,
and
I do. Over the years and of recent times as well, I do interviews here, there, and everywhere,
Aye.
and or go to little do's or functions and that. And I still to this day meet people, and they say, "Oh, and who are you? And you what age?" I say, "Well, how come you're a journalist? Why don't you know this?"
Aye.
They say, "You were 13."
Aye.
You'll be surprised how many people don't know about us, really.
I
you
only
know?
knew you were 14 because obviously I'd done my research. I mean,
Yeah.
I've not even looked at it. I've not needed to, but like the stuff that Scott had told me,
Yeah.
like, and obviously like how
Yeah.
much respect he's got.
But,
to, blah, blah,
Scott's
but
right in that you are. There are times when we are lost in
a
it.
bit overshadowed by
yeah.
the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham
No,
Six.
aye,
Which is
aye,
all.
it
Which is like we're not after getting. Here we are. But
But it
I
is, it
wonder
is.
why sometimes myself.
Yeah,
because I think it's quite unbelievable. I think that's why that. It's like the Waltons. You know the Waltons, John
Aye.
Knight. It's like the Waltons getting raided for
no,
moonshining or something. No,
Aye.
you wouldn't believe it. You know what I mean?
No, it is. And you can take like it's just like and into it's like Joe Steele and TC's case is a well known one up here. Do you know what I mean? And often people will refer to some people that are in prison at this moment as the worst miscarriage of justice in Scotland and stuff. I think that's the worst case.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And some people have got their own ideas of what and often I think that case gets lost in time.
Yeah.
But for the Maguires, I mean, there should be a film made about you guys.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
probably,
mean?
yeah.
Like, do you know what? See Big Jordan move away, Big 5-0. I
Uh-huh.
swear, I would love to actually look into doing something with you, like
Yeah.
about that if you're up for it.
See what happens,
And
eh?
I'd love to because honestly, because it's a whole side of a story I've never heard.
Yeah, whole family. I mean, just
I was quite upset. To me, that I've done like 50 odd podcasts now, right? And I would say that's the most.
It's so moving. It's raw
It's
to me
it's
still.
the sorest one
Yeah.
I've dealt with. Like I've done some bag work, but that was
Yeah.
There was a stage that I was going to say, can we stop a wee
Yeah.
minute? Like I need to take a wee breather. Do you know what I mean?
But like I say, it's only since I became a parent many years ago and continued to have more children. But I remember all of a sudden being a parent for the very first time, and my mum and dad are still locked up as it goes. When I first had my first child, my daughter, my mum and dad are still in prison. So it took time, and then other children that come along. I got a look into how they must have felt. Because I've actually said to myself on many occasions, and it's never going to happen, right? It's never going to happen. But if this was to happen to one of my children, now I wouldn't be going through you. I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't be able to do this again. I swear to God, I would not. And that's why it's been very important for me in educating my children about things and clearing them up.
Mhm.
And and just please don't ever let this happen again. I swear to God.
And I think as we're going to come on to like final messages and stuff like that, and but how the question I'd probably ask you, Scott, and I know you're in a position that you maybe need to answer it in a different way. Me and Patrick would answer it right, but how do we get the Crown in that to like maybe see that they are only a system and like they do get things wrong, and how do we get them to take accountability for things maybe that they do? Do you know what I mean? Like in the way that
Yeah, I think things are worse. There was off the back of that public outcry and that real movement to clear your name, clear your mum's name, and the other 10 wrongfully convicted for the bombings.
Yeah.
The public appetite was to make sure this doesn't happen again. Ask the question of why, and in response to that, the CCRC, who are massively under fire down in England for their performance, things are worse than that up here in our own Scottish version. And the appetite for change up here is a lot less than England, but the courts and the state can point to the commission and say, look, we fixed the problem with miscarriages of justice. We've got this vehicle for access to justice. And then the public outcry silence. They can point to this change. And now it's easier to almost cover up, and there's nobody coming
Yeah.
for the victims of miscarriage of justice nowadays like there was off the back of the publicity in
There
your
seems
cases.
to be people that I would say like the mainstream media are a bit scared to talk out about the way they maybe would have back then and about certain cases, and they're not really willing to stick their necks on the line and
But the
stuff.
mainstream media play your part in you getting convicted. You understand that, Sean.
know.
Perhaps your bad publicity come after the conviction. But look what
Mm.
they said about Patrick's mum. A loving, amazing woman, a proper quintessential Irish matriarch of a family.
Yeah.
They're calling her a monster, a murderer, a bomb maker.
Oh, Jesus.
and everybody in the country's read that. So is the mainstream media going to come and say...
And they never met her.
No.
You know, and geez, I mean, listen, if my mum was walking in there with a tray, and you didn't know it's my mum, with a tray with 4 cups of tea on it, you'd think, no, that's the tea lady, she's just made a cup. You wouldn't know that woman done 14 years and all that's been done to her. You know what I mean? And that's credit to her, I
Yeah.
swear to God.
Aye.
Absolutely
Like,
credit to her.
so
Because she knew the truth.
Aye.
She knew you were wrong.
Aye.
And she was going to prove it. And never stopped until she got that.
Aye.
Without hurting anyone. Without
And
shouting and screaming, without hurting anyone.
It needs to stop, doesn't it? It just needs. It needs to. There needs to be like.
Honestly, mate.
There
you
just needs to be somebody like there needs to be accountability
Yeah.
in the way that the things are done, because that
if you get it wrong, put it right as quick as
Aye.
possible. That's all. And even though I've gone through what I've gone through and all the rest of it, I've told my children that if you do wrong, don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, and we'll get through it.
Aye.
But stick your hand up.
Mhm.
If you're wrong, you're wrong. End of. And
Aye.
you know.
No, I know. It's listen. It's been an absolutely powerful, impactful, mind blowing podcast. As I say, is probably the hardest one for me in a lot of ways, but one of the best. Like probably like one of the best podcasts I've done. So I'll just leave it up to. I'll leave the kind of final message with you guys, right? Scott, I'll, if you want to go first, just a message that you would like to kind of say to the public that's watching this.
All I'd like to say in this instance is go and, if you've been moved by Patrick Maguire, the victim of miscarriage of justice, check out Patrick Maguire, the artist. Obviously that's a whole different
Yeah.
podcast in itself. Patrick's never been the greatest at selling himself as an artist, but his work and painting his self-portraits and painting his feelings of the damage that was done to him by way of his wrongful conviction is just as moving as listening to him for the few hours of this podcast. And if you'd like to find out more further than that, I would recommend reading My Father's Watch. As moving a book about the most appalling abuse of power against a 14-year-old boy that you'll ever see. But hopefully we can link whatever Patrick sells and puts his art out there. He's also involved in
I'll share it. I'll share my I'll share it
Yeah.
on. If you want me to do a wee kind of
there's pop-up
Collages
shops in
and
London
stuff.
that you've been running called the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah. Definitely art's been my saviour, mate. I swear to God. Absolutely.
Jimmy Boyle was a similar.
Jimmy Boyle.
Jimmy Boyle
Yeah.
was similar. Aye.
I've nearly got to meet him a few times. I don't think he's in the country. Are we talking about the Jimmy Boyle? now?
Jimmy Boyle, like Scottish Jimmy Boyle.
Yeah.
Aye. He's
Like a sense of freedom.
Sky sculptor.
I've come very close to meeting him a couple of times. Not planned or anything, but I do know his story very much.
It's amazing how creativity is it does save people, isn't it? It saves a lot of people. Like it's even the big guy you met, Big Jordan,
Yeah.
Big 5-0, he was
Yeah.
creativity that kind of saved him. But Patrick, I'll leave you with the last message.
Oh, I don't know, well,
just for the public,
Yeah.
and obviously like anything that you want
Yeah.
to say, like any wee final thing.
No,
you'd like
for
to
me,
say.
it's always about, as I tell my kids, you know, we all do wrong. Things happen in life, and we make mistakes, even or whatever you like. Just be honest about things, you know. Even if it is something you've done wrong, you know, just be honest and listen to each other, you know, and believe a little bit harder in what's going on around you, you know.
Aye. No, listen, honestly, can't thank you enough, guys.
No,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much
Yeah,
for coming
thanks,
on, and brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No,
Cheers.
thanks you, mate. Thank you.